Today's primaries led to big victories for multiple candidates backed by former President Trump. In Arizona, the former president's choice for Senate, Blake Masters, won in a crowded primary. His pick for Secretary of State, Mark Finchman, also won. Fincham has openly supported Trump's false claims about a stolen 2020 election and has publicly acknowledged his affiliation with the far-right group, the Oath Keepers. Joining me now in studio is CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto. Let me start with that question regarding Arizona, right?
Sure.
So you have some Trump-backed candidates who had a really good night.
Yep.
But this was not the general, okay? This was sort of, they compete against their own. Now they got to go up against the Democrat. Is it likely to be a wake-up call for them, or do you think they might have a pretty good chance?
Anybody with a party label after their name in this environment, Republican or Democrat, is going to get, history shows us, 90% at least of their partisans' votes. That's how polarized, that's how partisan this electorate is. By which I mean, you put somebody on the ballot as a Republican and they stand a chance in a general election in a battleground state like Arizona. So yes, they will. Now, the Democrats in some respects, and in a lot of these districts, are betting on this sort of median voter idea that maybe some candidates on the right might be, the Democrats will say, too far right for the general election. Yes, they are making that bet, but we'll see, because in this environment, which kind of favors the party out of power, favors the Republicans, that could be a risky bet.
Anything in Arizona you weren't expecting?
Arizona, this is one thing we want to watch all through the day, people just getting caught up. This Trump-endorsed Kari Lake, who took a late lead over Taylor Robeson here. This was an interesting race all through the night because Lake was down. This is the contest for governor, I should say, for the Republican side of the governor's race.
Right.
Lake was down. She's been catching up, passed a little bit. This is still a toss-up race. This is one to watch because, again, it's another Trump endorsement. And what I think is happening here is that people who vote on election day are going more towards Lake as we see those votes counted. And that's instructive, too, for everybody watching. When these votes are coming in, Trump voters, Republicans, vote on election day, and they really get that turnout up. We saw it even in 2020, same way.
Any polls showing what Lake would, how she would fare against the Democratic candidate in a general?
We will have to watch that. But on that point, David, let me show you this. Let me show you this. When Donald Trump endorses a candidate, polling shows, okay, this is nationwide, but it tells a larger story, that Republican voters are by an almost 6-to-1 margin more likely to vote for them. That's the president's power, but it's also Trumpism, right? They believe he's fighting for them more so even than their own party in Congress. It's a lot of affinity for one figure. And the other part of this that I think is really important is that the ones who vote in primaries are even more so. This is a more ideological electorate. This is a more motivated electorate.
More so likely to
say that they want a candidate who's been endorsed by Trump. It goes from 57 up to 64% among Republicans who always vote in primaries. And the larger story there is, when Americans say they're dissatisfied with politics, Congress is too polarized, too extremes, these primary voters that we're watching on nights like tonight are even more polarized than that, and they're picking the candidates. And that's one example.
Take us to Kansas. What a night. I mean, we're talking about a richly red Republican state of Kansas. And the voters overwhelmingly make this decision regarding abortion.
This is a big one. In some sense, this is the biggest one of the night. Because it surprised a lot of people, if not the win for no in deeply Republican conservative Kansas, then the size of that, right? This was over 60%. It shrunk back a little bit. But the thing, just to tell a tale of sitting at the decision desk watching this, we were saying, and I was just saying to you, I'm watching Western Kansas, the most conservative part of a conservative state. And I was sure that as these counties were going to come in, it would get tighter, right? But no. These are counties where, okay, the yes side got, on average across the state, 41%. But Trump won 70 and 80% in these counties. So that tells you that some Republicans must have voted no. There's no way around it. And that tells you that there is a piece, and we know this from polling too, there is a piece of the Republican Party, Republican women, that may have thought that this was going too far.
What's McConnell saying this morning? and other Republicans in other states? What does Kansas do to excite people in other states?
I think for both parties, for the Democrats, this will probably be read as a message that they ought to talk about abortion more.
Okay.
And I will tell you, Democratic voters in our latest polling tell us that even though they think the Republicans are too extreme, they are dissatisfied and don't think the Democrats are doing enough to protect abortion rights. So they don't necessarily see the Democratic Party, as the answer right now. And that should be a message perhaps for Democrats politically. And on the Republican side, frankly, they probably want to talk about the economy. They probably want to talk about inflation, because that is the number one thing still on voters' minds.
But if they were unclear how much people care about the abortion issue, there you go.
This is gonna get people talking nationwide for a long time.
Anthony Salvanto, thank you, sir.
Thanks, man.